cards are the thing I'm most excited to talk about today. Everyone knows about the red and purple. They've been discussed to death. Green is on the rise, but we still have a lot left to be revealed. So, I mean, we've gotten a set 1 card and a promo, much like the other colors. And we've gotten some of the starter deck, but we know that this isn't it. I believe there are 17 different cards in the other starter decks, although that's easy enough to check. If we're excluding the leader, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 cards. I know there's the same number in both decks, so I was one off. I guess I was counting leader. So there's 16 cards in each starter deck, yet for green, we've only got 6. So we've got 10 cards left to go. That's a lot of ground yet to cover. So let's see what we can infer here, though. So the leader's effect, activate main. Once per turn, you can pay 3, and you can discard a card from your hand. You switch your leader to active. I have no reason to believe at the moment that there would be any benefit to this other than attacking a second time. We've yet to see an effect that involves a leader being active or rested. So I'm gonna, and I don't personally think we're gonna get one. So let's take it for what it is as a second attack. We don't currently have a way to give our leader double attack like we do this this other kid here, which would be make this leader much better. I think this effect is very strong. Discarding a card worries me. It's the kind of effect I'm glad it exists. I'm glad it's there. I mean, it's discarding a card to get a second attack is very akin to playing a rush card, right? Like it would be very similar to, oh, I'm holding my Sanji, I'll use my Sanji now for 2 and make it 3 with Luffy leader so that it has rush. You know the spiel. It's just that your opponent doesn't have to beat over the Sanji that you've then played, but an extra attack is still pretty nice. I mean, and that extra attack, I mean, in theory, it could be 7k bonus. Like, if you have all 10 Dawn, you can attach 7 to him, swing with a 12k, then pay 3, untap him, swing with a 12k again. That's a lot of power you're putting down on your opponent. But discarding a card just makes me so nervous. In a game that's... all card games are about resource management, and this one is about a lot of resource management. And, geez, losing a card in hand can really suck. At the same time, it's not uncommon for there to be dead cards in hand. For example, if we were to look at this Kaido deck again, you need to run 4 Onigashima, right? Because you're really, really, really hoping you see it as soon as possible. Playing it on your second turn. But then once you've played 1, the rest are dead for the rest of the game. So that's why the discarding of Jack can be nice. To dump the dead Onigashima doesn't matter. If the green stage, and I'm fairly certain we will get 1 stage in every starter deck. If the green stage is critically important, like Onigashima is, but then also is a dead draw late, you know, you will get cards in your hand like that. Maybe you don't need both kids right now, you know? Maybe you don't need your cards that don't counter. Maybe it's better to push. Those situations do come up. I think this is a very strong effect. I'm not trying to discount it. I think that it won't be able to be used as frequently as a lot of people are thinking that it will. It's not the kind of effect you can just use every turn. 3 mana, 3 Dawn, and discarding a card is a steep cost for an effect that doesn't get you an additional body on board. Very good card, though. Let's talk about the new killer. On play, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. I mean, so from what we know so far, this is really, really, really good into Luffy and does almost nothing into Kaido. And I'm not all that convinced that it'll do a ton into Kid. Now, blowing up this promo Kid would be nice, but you can swing into this promo Kid, Swing into it twice with your leader, in theory. The strong effect. And this card gets played off trigger, which is really cool. But it's also only a 3K, much like Who's Who. So, you know. I think it'll be a 4 of, but I don't think it'll be that effective in the kid deck because a lot of the kid stuff untaps itself. I don't think it would be super effective against a Crocodile deck. I don't think it'd be bad against a Crocodile deck. Let's look at our Crocodile cards so far, because, I mean, we've got... Alvida isn't here. Why is Alvida not here? Well, okay. I'm almost certain she is. No, she's not. So we'll look at Alvida for a second. So, I mean, Alvida is really good, and blowing her up when she's tapped with this kind of effect is really strong. My biggest problem with this line of thought is that a lot of these cards are getting swung into anyway. Like, they don't... Usually the biddies don't last long when they're tapped. Usually. You get your Jinbeis and your Zoros that are easier to defend. But your Sanjis, your Usopps, your Alvidas, your Who's Who's, a lot of them are so weak that when they get attacked into, they're already not worth defending. And your leader can swing twice if needed. Here's Alvida. So, I mean, this card is insane, right? But, and warrants removing, and will be tapped because it used its effect. I think I'd say I have 2 big problems, maybe 3, with the killer card. One being that it seems very matchup specific. Like, I don't think this card will do much into this green deck at all. Blowing up the Eustace Kid is nice, I guess, but from what we've seen thus far, a lot of it restands itself, or a lot of your best cards are too big. It does almost nothing into the Kaido deck. I mean, really. Let's take a look. Oh. That was weird. This gave me a noise. We're going to back out of this game. We'll rejoin it in a minute. We'll do it to take a look at the Kaido deck. So let's see what cards from the Kaido deck does that even hit for my list. Jack, cool. Who's Who, great. Black Maria, if it's rested. If Black Maria is rested, it's already dead. I think that's it. Sasaki. So it hits Jack, Sasaki, and Who's who are 4K and 3K respectively. So they're already likely to be dying. The card basically does nothing in that matchup. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that it doesn't answer the card until the damage has been done. It doesn't kill the Alvida until they've gotten the effect off. It doesn't kill the kid until it's swung twice because of this law. It doesn't answer a problem until the problem has already begun. And that, so, I don't know. I'm just not that crazy about it. I feel like if it were 4K, I'd like it more, but 3K isn't really a stat I want on board in one of my 5 slots. Just doesn't do a lot. Heat and Beppo are your generic vanillas. Beppo is interesting, actually. Let's talk about this law real quick. 5-drop blocker. On play, you return one of your characters to your hand. If you do, play one character card with a cost 3 or less from your hand. So the reason that this is important is I was talking to Jag on stream the other day. If you missed it, one of the things he said, we were talking about this law, and he said that it makes the cards the Jin Rummies, which is what I refer to these 1-drop 3Ks as, because I hate them, and Jin Rummy sucks. It makes them not as terrible. So if we were to talk about purple for a second, we have seen no 1-drop cards, 1-drop character cards that are not Jin Rummy in the starter deck or the set. Red has 3. Green, we've only seen the 1. Now, we know every color is going to get these vanillas. We've got that in the bag. But if green doesn't get any other or many other good 1-drops, this might actually get run even though it sucks. Because let me paint you a picture. On turn 1, you play Beppo. On turn 2, you play your stage. You do whatever. On turn 3, you play Law, bounce the Beppo to your hand, you've got its counter potential back, and play a 3-drop. So running 1-drops in a deck with 4 of this Law is value, and it means that these 1-drop 3Ks, this Beppo might, and I'm going to heavy on the might, actually see play. And I hope it does, because who doesn't like Beppo? Mink Tribes for the win. And then you know, your 2-drop 4K, these cards suck. Trafficker Law, on play, set one of your rested cards with Super Rookies or Heart Pirates trait with the cost of 5 or less to active. So this is really cool. It untaps your kid so it gets 2 attacks. It can untap a blocker if you want to attack with a blocker and then untap it, although we have not seen a blocker that this would affect. This is a card that is very indicative of other things, which is nice. I love this kid. I think I like it more than most people. A blocker that can swing and then untap itself. 7 is a very steep cost, though. It dodges a lot of removal, but it doesn't dodge, if we're talking Kaido deck, it doesn't dodge the 2 Big Daddy Kaidos, the 9 and 10 drop. But other than that, we have yet to see a card that can deal with this without battle, you know? And I think it's getting slept on. I don't think it's like a godsend, but I like this card a lot. I like this card a lot for sure. And I think there are decks that just can't answer it. Like, what does Luffy do? Well, that brings up a good point, too. We could talk about, if there are side decks, how Diablo Jamba might actually be a relevant card, because green and blue have shown a lot of signs of being blocker focused, which is very cool. We haven't talked about Scalpel, and that's the only card here we haven't talked. Well, just real quick, if you have 2 Dawn attached, this card deals double damage, but I feel like that's old news. So is Scalpel, kind of. It's a plus 2k counter that untaps one of your Dawn, switches it to active when you use it. So it basically is free, but you need to have the 1 Dawn to pay for it in the first place. And then trigger, switch up to 2 of your Dawn to active. Now, the real things to discuss with green, now that we've gotten all the surface level stuff out of the way, is the implications we have for things that aren't on the paper yet. We'll start with Killer. This card, I think, is very mediocre right now, but it has the potential to become very strong if we get effects that can rest your opponent's cards. All of a sudden, this card can become single target removal if we have a way to do that. And seeing as how we've seen a lot of green synergy in Law, in Scalpel, in Eustace Kid, again, in untapping our stuff, I would not be at all surprised if green had a theme of resting your opponent's stuff. So that, be on the lookout for that. I think it's what will make Killer a more viable card than it is right now, because right now it doesn't answer something until it's done its damage, and that's a big problem. Same thing with Scalpel. This card is bad right now. Like, this card serves literally no purpose right now. Brook and Alvida and Alti all do what this card does, except also do something else. The important thing here is that you're switching your Dawn to active during your opponent's turn. That's a big deal. It implies that we're going to get counterplay during your opponent's turn. This is going to be the color that reacts at instant speed during your opponent's turn, like Dragon Ball. So real quick, let's look up Cold Bloodlust and Dragon Ball Super. So this card came out in set 1. And it's insanely broken now. But in set 1, it was still very strong, but it wasn't like the end-all be-all. It ruined the game. If your leader card is Frieza's Army, the battle card played has its skill negated for the duration of the turn. Counterplay. So you would play this card when your opponent played the equivalent of a character card, and you could basically stop ETBs with it. You know? Imagine you stop the killer effect. You stop the law effects. And crazy, stop this law effect. It looks like the returning one of your characters to hand is part of the cost. So if you were to play law and bounce one of your boys and then have this get negated so that you lose something without gaining anything, that's a big deal. Now, I'm not necessarily saying they're going to add the equivalent of Cold Bloodlust, but Cold Bloodlust was strong, but I wouldn't necessarily say broken in set 1 or set 2. It was meta-defining for sure. I think we're going to get stuff like this. There was also a card in set 1, Crusher Ball. Here it is. that the battle card is played in rest mode. So, you know, they try to play something and you'd immediately say, nope, that's in rest mode. Now, that mattered a lot more in Dragon Ball, because in Dragon Ball, you can attack with a card the turn it comes into play. But it can tap down a blocker so that you don't have to deal with it on your turn. It can tap down a rush card so you don't have to deal with it during their turn. It can leave things susceptible to killer. It can tap down problem cards that you can then swing into. That type of effect has a lot of potential. I don't think we're going to see a Cold Bloodlust effect where it negates the effect. I honestly bet we're going to see that kind of effect. So those are the things to look out for with greens.